Have you ever stopped to think about what fuels a truly epic journey? Not the kind where you pack a suitcase and hit the road for a long weekend, but the kind of trek that spans continents and shapes the destiny of an entire species. You close your eyes and you can almost feel the chill of the air, the vast emptiness of a world that existed long before ours. This is a story about hunger, about a stomach's simple, unyielding demand for a certain kind of meal and how that demand carved a path through the ancient world. You are not just listening. You are stepping onto the frigid plains of the Pleistocene epoch, feeling the crunch of snow beneath a monumental foot, smelling the faint, earthy scent of a world frozen in time. You are here to follow the great wanderer, the woolly mammoth. Before the grand migration, before the epic journeys you've heard whispers of, there was simply survival. You're standing on the Siberian tundra, the wind biting at your face, the sky a vast gray blanket. Around you, the world is a sea of subtle colors, pale greens, muted browns, and the stark white of snow. This isn't the lush, vibrant world we know. This is a land of sparse, resilient life. And the king of this land, the massive woolly mammoth, is a creature perfectly designed for it. Its dinner table is the vast open plain, and its menu is surprisingly specific. You watch a colossal beast, shaggy with dark fur, lower its massive head. Its curved tusks, magnificent and intimidating, aren't for fighting saber-toothed tigers today. Instead, they're used to sweep aside a thin layer of snow, revealing the hidden treasure beneath the dense, nutritious tundra grasses. This isn't just any grass. This is a special cold-hardy flora, a mammoth steppe ecosystem that provided a surprising amount of bang for its buck. Imagine a plant that could survive being buried under snow for months, then spring back to life with a burst of energy the moment the sun gave it a chance. This is what you see the mammoth consuming mouthful after mouthful. These grasses, rich in fiber and tough to digest, were the primary fuel for these magnificent animals. And the mammoth, in turn, was a walking eating machine, built from the ground up to process this exact diet. Its digestive system was a masterpiece of biological engineering, a fermentation vat on 4 legs. Think of it like a cow, but on a grander, more epic scale. The food would travel through a complex series of stomachs and intestines where specialized bacteria would get to work, breaking down the tough plant fibers and extracting every last drop of nutrition. This process generated a huge amount of internal heat, a little biological furnace that helped the mammoth stay warm in the unforgiving cold. So while you're shivering, the mammoth is basically running its own internal heating system, all powered by the fibrous meal it's patiently munching on. This diet and the body designed to process it shaped everything about the mammoth's life. The sheer quantity of food required to sustain such a massive body meant that mammoths couldn't stay in one place for long. They were always on the move, a slow, deliberate march dictated by the need to find the next patch of untouched grazing land. The herd you're with now is a perfect example. You notice the younger mammoths, their coats slightly less thick, are already learning this rhythm. They follow their mothers, copying the movements, learning the silent language of the land and the location of its edible bounty. This is the mainstream historical fact of the day. The diet of the woolly mammoth was the primary driver of its migratory behavior. It wasn't wanderlust or a desire to see the world. It was a simple, non-negotiable need for fuel. The mammoth was a creature of habit, and that habit was eating. Now for a quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether the woolly mammoth's curved tusks were more for fighting or for clearing snow, but a fascinating theory suggests they had a third, more unusual use. Some paleontologists believe that the mammoths, particularly The bulls would sometimes use their tusks like giant ice picks to crack open permafrost and lick mineral-rich soil. Imagine a bull mammoth standing tall, using its magnificent tusks to get to a patch of tasty frozen dirt. It's a bit like you meticulously using a fancy new kitchen gadget just to get a single scoop of ice cream from the bottom of the tub. A little dramatic, a little overkill, but effective all the same. This would provide them with essential minerals not found in the grasses, a little bonus flavor that was crucial for their health. You can almost hear the soft rumbling grunts of the herd as they move. It's not a sound of distress, but one of contentment, a low, constant communication that says, "We are here, we are together, and we are moving toward our next meal." The sheer scale of the landscape is awe-inspiring, and you feel tiny, a mere footnote in the epic narrative of these animals. But you are here, a silent observer watching the first steps of a journey that will take them far beyond this familiar, cold home. You can see the determination in their eyes, the quiet focus on the task at hand, eating. For now, the world is a simple equation of hunger and food. The path forward is not a matter of choice, it's a matter of necessity, and the mammoths are simply following their stomachs. It's the humblest of beginnings for a story that will shake the very foundations of two continents. The cold has a way of silencing the world, doesn't it? As you trudge along with the herd, the only sounds are the rhythmic crunch of snow and the soft rumbling conversations of these gentle giants. The air smells clean, crisp, and so old. It's a scent that tells you you're in a world untouched by a single human city, a world where the only skyscrapers are ancient mountains capped with ice. You've been following them for what feels like an eternity, a ghost in their midst, observing their silent, purposeful march. This isn't a stroll in the park. It's a determined, multi-generational mission. The herd is moving. You can feel it in the slow, powerful swing of their legs, the focused tilt of their heads. Their internal compass, you realize, is set to one destination: food. The landscape is changing subtly at first, then more dramatically. The wide-open steppe gives way to a more rugged terrain. You see patches of stunted trees twisted and gnarled by the wind, and a new kind of moss clinging to the rocks. The mammoth's pace doesn't falter. They seem to know this path instinctively, a route etched into their genetic memory by countless generations. Their diet of high-fiber grasses is still the core of their sustenance, but now you notice a few of the younger, more adventurous ones, the teenagers of the herd, if you will, nipping at the bark of a small birch tree or tearing at a patch of tough evergreen shrubs. It's not a change of diet, not yet, but it's a sign. The old menu is becoming harder to find. The mammoth steppe is shrinking, retreating from the encroaching cold, or perhaps simply overgrazed by a growing population of large herbivores. This is the start of the great long march. The sheer scale of it is humbling. You're not just walking a few miles. You're embarking on a journey that will span thousands of miles and thousands of years. It's a slow-motion epic, where a single day's walk might be just a few miles, but the destination is a continent away. The motivation for this immense undertaking is simple and profound. Starvation is a brutal motivator. The herd leaders, the wise old matriarchs with their chipped tusks and scarred hides, know the signs. The grasses are less plentiful, less nutritious. The winter seasons are longer, the springs arrive later. They are moving away from a land that can no longer support them. The mainstream historical fact here is that the vast continental migrations of the woolly mammoth were not random wanderings, but a response to localized resource depletion. It's like a person leaving their small town because all the jobs have dried up. The mammoths weren't searching for adventure. They were searching for survival. They were following the promise of a more abundant world, a greener pasture on the horizon. The journey itself was fraught with peril. Imagine the feeling of a world you've always known, a world of familiar smells and landmarks slowly fading behind you. This is a journey born of necessity, of the gnawing anxiety of an empty stomach. You can feel the collective tension in the herd, the heightened awareness of their surroundings. Every new scent, every rustle in the bushes could be a new predator, or more importantly, a new food source. For a quirky tidbit, let's talk about their tusks again, but this time with a different perspective. Scientists have discovered that mammoth tusks are like tree rings for their lives, but instead of showing age, they can reveal their movements and diet. Each layer of tusk growth contains chemical isotopes from the water and food the mammoth consumed. By analyzing these isotopes, researchers can reconstruct a mammoth's life story, mapping its movements across thousands of miles and charting the changes in its diet. So that magnificent set of ivory you're admiring, it's not just a weapon or a tool. It's a living, breathing diary, a permanent record of every place it's ever been. It's the ultimate GPS tracker, but with a much more elegant design. The open scholarly debate surrounding this period revolves around the speed of the migration. Historians still argue whether the woolly mammoths migrated in a single, continuous, rapid push across the continents, or if it was a much slower, more gradual expansion. Did they make a mad dash for new lands driven by a sudden and catastrophic food shortage, or was it a more measured, multi-generational process of slow expansion, a creeping colonization of new territory as small groups broke off from the main herd? You watch the herd. You're with their pace, steady but unhurried, and you can't help but wonder if they're part of a grand exodus or just the tip of a slow, inevitable wave of change. The answer, you realize, is probably somewhere in the middle, a complex blend of both rapid flight and patient expansion. You feel a gentle shift in the air, a different kind of cold. The wind carries a new scent. Something unfamiliar, something with the promise of more. The herd seems to notice it too. A few of them raise their trunks, sniffing the breeze, their ears smaller than modern elephants. To reduce heat loss, a clever little adaptation, flicking back and forth. You are a passenger on a journey with no map, no destination on a screen, just the innate, unshakable belief that there is something better on the other side of this vast, endless expanse. The herd isn't just walking. It's being pulled forward by a primal force, a force as old as life itself. You close your eyes for a moment, and when you open them again, you see it, a faint, misty line on the horizon. It's a new land, a new world waiting to be discovered, all because their stomachs told them to go. The air is different now, isn't it? It's not just the temperature, but a certain dampness, a smell of sea salt and frozen mud. You've been walking for what seems like a lifetime, the endless white and gray landscape of the tundra, a fading memory. The herd is moving with a new urgency, a palpable sense of purpose that wasn't there before. The elders in the group, those ancient matriarchs with their long, weathered tusks, seem to know exactly where they're going. And you, a silent observer in their midst, are starting to understand. The faint, misty line on the horizon is no longer a promise, but a reality. You are about to cross into a new world. This is the great moment, the crossing of Beringia. You've probably heard of it in some distant history class, that mythical land bridge that once connected Siberia to Alaska. But to be here, to feel the vast flat expanse of what was once the floor of the Bering Sea, is something else entirely. The land isn't a bridge in the sense of a suspension bridge over a river. It's a massive, flat, treeless plain hundreds of miles wide. The Ice Age had locked up so much of the world's water in vast continental glaciers, that the sea levels dropped, revealing this massive stretch of land. It was a frozen, wind-scoured highway, a narrow corridor of survival. You can feel the wind whipping across this massive plain, carrying with it the scent of a different kind of earth, a different kind of promise. The mammoths aren't just walking, they're migrating with a purpose. Their stomachs, those magnificent rumbling furnaces, are demanding something more than the sparse, overgrazed tundra they left behind. The diet that had sustained them for so long was no longer sufficient. The nutritional content of the steppe grasses had diminished, and the sheer energy required to stay warm and move was exceeding the calories they could consume. This is the simple, elegant truth of their journey. The necessity of finding a new, more abundant food source was the very engine that fueled the great migration across the Bering Land Bridge. It was a desperate gamble, a choice between a slow decline and a monumental journey into the unknown. For a quirky tidbit, historians still argue whether the land bridge was a single, uninterrupted path. Some theories suggest it was more like a series of smaller islands and frozen passages, a kind of archipelago of survival. Imagine the mammoths hopping from one frozen island to another, guided by the scent of vegetation, a little like an ancient game of biological leapfrog. The mammoths weren't just following a single path. They were navigating a complex, ever-changing landscape, where the only certainty was the hunger in their bellies and the promise of what lay ahead. As you walk, you notice something remarkable about the herd's behavior. They aren't just eating what they find. They're moving with a certain efficiency, a kind of ancient logistical genius. They move in a line, almost a procession, their massive bodies creating a path for the younger members. They stop only to graze on patches of hardy shrubs and lichens that somehow survive in this inhospitable landscape. But these are just pit stops. The main goal is to cross. The journey itself is a monumental expenditure of energy. Think about a long road trip you've taken. You need to pack snacks, make sure you have enough gas. For the mammoths, their gas was the food they consumed, and they had to be incredibly efficient with how they used it. They couldn't afford to waste energy on frivolous grazing. Every bite had to count. The open scholarly debate here centers on the timing and speed of this crossing. Historians still argue whether the crossing was a single rapid event or a series of migrations over thousands of years. Did a sudden and catastrophic climate shift push them all across at once, or was it a gradual creeping expansion, a slow colonization of a new world? You watch the herd, their pace steady and unhurried, and you wonder if they're a part of a slow, inexorable wave or if they're racing against the clock. The truth you realize is likely a blend of both a mix of desperate, fast-paced movements and a slow, methodical expansion. You feel a change in the ground beneath your feet. The terrain is becoming less flat, more rolling, and the wind, while still biting, feels a little less desolate. The scent on the wind is now stronger, a mix of new vegetation, different from anything you've smelled before. The herd notices it too. A low rumbling sound ripples through the group, a sound that's not quite a grunt and not quite a sigh, but something in between, a sound of relief and anticipation. They know they've made it. The land bridge is behind them. Ahead lies a new continent, a new world, and a new dinner menu. You've just witnessed one of the most epic journeys in the history of life on Earth, driven not by a grand plan, but by the humble, honest demands of a hungry stomach. There's a feeling of newness in the air, a different kind of energy that pulses through the landscape. The sky is still vast and cold, but the ground beneath your feet feels richer, less desolate. The herd has made it. You've crossed the Bering Land Bridge, a monumental achievement, a journey fueled by sheer necessity. The world you're now standing in is North America, a place where no woolly mammoth from this particular lineage has ever set foot. It's a land of 1,000 possibilities, a giant, untamed pantry just waiting to be explored. And you can almost feel the collective sigh of relief from the herd. The relentless march of survival has for the moment given way to a quieter, more hopeful exploration. The mammoths, for the first time in what must feel like ages, aren't just eating for calories. They're tasting new things, exploring a new menu. You watch as a young mammoth, its coat, a thick, shaggy blanket, pulls at a different kind of plant. A taller, more fibrous shrub that wasn't present on the Beringian steppe. The plant seems to offer a new texture, a new kind of flavor. It's a small moment, but it's a profound one. Well, this isn't just a new meal, it's a dietary shift, a moment of adaptation that will shape the future of these magnificent animals. They're no longer confined to the sparse, cold, hardy grasses of their homeland. They found a new buffet, and they're ready to dig in. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact that is often overlooked in the grand epic of the mammoth migration. The arrival of mammoths in North America introduced them to a vast array of new food sources, leading to a crucial period of dietary adaptation. This wasn't a sudden, seamless transition. It was a process of trial and error, of learning which plants were nutritious and which were not. The younger mammoths, more curious and less set in their ways, were likely the pioneers of this new diet, testing new shrubs and forages, while the older matriarchs relied on their instincts and the familiar grasses they could still find. This is a crucial detail because it shows that mammoths weren't just simple eating machines. They were intelligent, adaptive creatures capable of altering their behavior to survive in a brand new environment. For a quirky tidbit, let's talk about the incredible amount of food a mammoth needed to survive. Imagine this: a full-grown woolly mammoth could consume up to 400 pounds of vegetation a day. That's a staggering amount of food. To put that into perspective, that's roughly the weight of a baby grand piano. Every single day. So when the herd found this new land, it wasn't just a matter of finding a few patches of new grass. It was about finding a new reliable source of food on a massive scale. The sheer logistical challenge of keeping these animals fed was immense, and the new continent, with its vast grasslands and diverse flora, was the only place that could truly support them. It was a perfect match, a symbiotic relationship between a hungry giant and a fertile land. The open scholarly debate surrounding this period focuses on the speed of the mammoth's expansion across the new continent. Historians still argue whether they spread out rapidly like a wave crashing across the shore, or if they took a more measured, gradual approach, settling into new territories as they were discovered. Did they follow the retreating ice sheets with a sense of urgency, or did they slowly colonize the new lands one generation at a time? You watch the herd, their pace still steady and unhurried, and you can't help but wonder if they're a small part of a much larger, faster movement. The evidence, you realize, is likely a mix of both. The initial push may have been fast-driven by the hunger that brought them here, but the subsequent colonization was probably a much slower, more methodical process. As you walk, you notice the landscape becoming more varied. You see glimpses of what will one day become towering forests, vast plains and rolling hills. The scent on the wind is rich with new smells, the sweet aroma of new grasses, the earthy smell of a different kind of soil. The herd is moving with a quiet confidence, no longer driven by the desperation of starvation, but by the promise of a better life. You've watched them cross a continent, and now you're watching them make a new home. It's a story not just of survival, but of hope, of the unwavering belief that a better meal, a better life is always just over the next hill. You close your eyes for a moment, and you can almost feel the ground beneath your feet vibrating with the quiet, powerful rhythm of a new world beginning. You're still with the herd, but the feeling of desperation that once clung to them has been replaced by a kind of quiet confidence. They've found a land of abundance, a veritable smorgasbord of new plants and terrains. You've walked with them for so long that their quiet rhythm has become your own. The slow, deliberate pace, the constant low grumble of conversation, the way they use their trunks like a chef inspecting produce at the market, it's all second nature now. But as they begin to settle into this new world, you notice a subtle yet profound change taking place, not in their behavior, but in their very bodies. The proof of their journey and their new diet is literally in their mouths. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. The dental evolution of woolly mammoths was directly influenced by their diet. You lean in a little closer to one of the younger mammoths, its mouth ajar as it chews, and you get a glimpse of a set of magnificent ridged teeth. Unlike the flat, grinding plates of herbivores who eat soft grasses, the mammoth's molars were a marvel of evolutionary design. They were a series of enamel ridges stacked one on top of the other that acted like a kind of prehistoric shredder. These ridges, incredibly hard and durable, were perfect for pulverizing the tough, fibrous grasses of the tundra. But now in this new world, they are adapting to a new menu. The plants here are different. They're not just grass, they're a complex mix of shrubs, mosses, and even the occasional tough bark from a tree. This new diet, with its varied textures and densities, is putting new pressures on the mammoth's dental structure. Imagine going from a diet of a simple smoothie to one that includes crunchy vegetables and nuts. Your teeth would have to adjust, right? The mammoth's teeth are doing just that, but on an evolutionary timescale. Over generations, the shape of their molars would likely become even more complex with different ridges to handle the new kinds of vegetation. This wasn't a conscious choice, but a slow, inevitable adaptation driven by the simple need to chew their food effectively. Here's a quirky tidbit. The woolly mammoth's teeth were so hard that they could be found in fossil records long after the rest of the skeleton had decayed. Paleontologists have used these teeth with their unique ridge patterns and wear marks to track not only the mammoth's diet, but also its age. Imagine a set of teeth that are essentially a biography of the animal. A smooth, worn tooth tells a story of an old mammoth that has spent its life grinding away at tough vegetation. A tooth with sharp, pristine ridges tells a story of a young mammoth full of life and with many more meals ahead of it. It's like a dental detective story, where the teeth are the primary witnesses. The open scholarly debate here revolves around the pace of this dental evolution. Historians still argue whether the changes in mammoth teeth were a more or less immediate response to the dietary changes of the New World, or if it was a much slower process that took thousands of years. Was it a fast-track evolution, driven by the urgency of a new food source, or a slow grinding process that mirrored the pace of the mammoths themselves? You watch a mammoth chewing its massive jaw, working with a slow grinding rhythm, and you can't help but wonder. The answer, you realize, is likely a mix of both. The initial changes were probably fast, a rapid adaptation to the new, tougher plants. But the more subtle, long-term changes, the kind that created new ridges and different shapes, were likely the result of a much slower, more methodical evolutionary process. You've been a witness to their migration, to the epic journey across continents. Now you're a witness to something equally profound, the silent, slow-motion story of evolution. It's a story told not in words, but in the shape of a tooth, the strength of a jaw, the quiet, persistent rhythm of a digestive system, perfectly adapted to its environment. The mammoths have not just found a new home. They have become a part of it, their bodies and their diets intertwined in a delicate, beautiful dance of survival. You watch them, these magnificent creatures, as they chew, and you're watching a story that is literally being written in their bones. The journey continues, though the pace has softened. The desperation of the long march has been replaced by the steady rhythm of a herd settling into a new home. You've become so attuned to their movements that you can almost feel the ground shaking beneath your feet with their immense weight. The landscape is lush with new grasses and shrubs, a welcome change from the stark, unforgiving tundra. But as the seasons turn and the cold begins to creep back in, you notice something new about their diet, something that reveals the sheer ingenuity of these creatures. The menu, it turns out, is more complex than you ever imagined. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact that is often overshadowed by the grand epic of their migrations. The woolly mammoth's diet was not just limited to grasses and shrubs, but also included a surprising amount of lichen and moss. You watch as a matriarch, her tusk stained with the earth, pushes aside a layer of snow not to find grass, but to reveal a patch of pale green and gray lichen clinging to a rock. With a delicate movement of her trunk, she scoops up a mouthful, chewing with a slow, deliberate rhythm. This isn't just a snack. It's a critical part of their survival strategy. Lichen and moss, though not as calorie-dense as grasses, are incredibly resilient. They can survive being frozen solid for months, and they are one of the few food sources available when the snow blankets the entire landscape. Imagine a winter so cold and so long that all the fresh green food is gone. For the mammoths, this was a regular occurrence, but they had a secret weapon, a kind of emergency ration, that was always available. Lichen and moss were like the ultimate survival food, a reliable source of sustenance that allowed them to weather the harshest of winters. It's a bit like you finding a secret stash of your favorite snacks hidden away in your pantry for a snow day. It's a simple, brilliant solution to a problem that could have spelled their doom. This quirky tidbit of their diet reveals just how adaptable and resourceful these animals truly were. They weren't just eating what was easy to find. They were eating what was necessary to survive. The open scholarly debate here revolves around the nutritional value of this specific diet. Historians still argue whether lichen and moss were a primary food source or a last resort meal. Were they a regular planned part of the mammoth's diet, providing essential vitamins and minerals not found in grasses? Or were they only consumed during periods of extreme scarcity when no other food was available? You watch the mammoth chew its powerful jaws grinding away at the tough, resilient plant, and you can't help but wonder. The answer, you realize, is likely a mix of both. During the leanest parts of winter, lichen and moss were probably a last-ditch effort to stay alive, but during a milder winter they may have been a regular, albeit smaller, part of their diet, a little biological supplement that helped them stay healthy. This reliance on a hidden, resilient food source also shaped their migratory patterns. They weren't just following the sun, they were following the presence of these humble plants. Their migration routes were likely etched with the locations of massive rock formations or areas where lichen and moss were particularly abundant. It's a subtle detail, a quiet part of their grand story that is often overlooked, but it's a crucial one. The location of a few scattered patches of resilient plants could determine the survival of an entire herd. It's a reminder that even the smallest details, the most unassuming parts of the natural world, can play a monumental role in the grand epic of life. You've been a witness to their grand journey, the epic crossing of continents. Now you're a witness to a more intimate, but no less profound story of survival. It's a story told in the quiet moments of a cold winter, in the soft crunch of a mouthful of lichen, and in the unwavering determination of a herd that knows how to find a meal even when the world is covered in a blanket of white. You close your eyes and you can almost feel the cold seeping into your bones, but you also feel the warmth of the herd, the quiet confidence of a species that knows how to make a meal out of nothing. The air is different again, not just colder, but sharper with a subtle bite that hints at a longer, harsher winter to come. The herd moves with a heavier, more deliberate pace. You've been with them for so long that you can read the subtle changes in their body language, the way a matriarch's trunk hangs a little lower, the way the younger ones seem to move a little closer together. The land that once seemed so abundant is now showing its teeth, a stark, frozen world where every meal is a victory and every day is a struggle. This is the Ice Age supermarket, and the shelves are looking increasingly bare. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. A changing climate and dwindling plant life created a nutritional crisis for the woolly mammoths. The Ice Age was not a single, static deep freeze. It was a dynamic, ever-shifting period of warming and cooling cycles. And you are witnessing one of the periods of intense cooling where the glaciers are expanding, pushing the lush, fertile grassland south and leaving behind a barren, wind-scoured landscape. The grasses they so depend on are now smaller, less nutritious, and harder to find. The once reliable buffet is now a scattered collection of scraps. The sheer scale of this crisis is hard to comprehend. Imagine an entire herd of 10-ton animals, each one needing hundreds of pounds of food a day, trying to survive in a world where food is a precious, rare commodity. The competition for resources is fierce. You see other large herbivores, bison, wild horses, caribou, all vying for the same dwindling patches of vegetation. It's a slow-motion battle for survival, a quiet, desperate struggle for every single blade of grass. You can feel the tension in the air, the collective anxiety of a species that is teetering on the edge. For a quirky tidbit, let's talk about the incredible stomach contents found in some of the most well-preserved mammoth remains. By analyzing the stomach and intestine contents of frozen mammoth carcasses, scientists have been able to get a literal snapshot of their last meals. And what they've found is a stark illustration of this nutritional crisis. One mammoth named Liuba was found to have traces of milk in her stomach, suggesting she was still nursing at a young age when she died. Another named Dima had a stomach full of sedges and grasses, but the wear on his teeth suggested he had been gnawing on tough woody plants in the months leading up to his death. These last meals are a heartbreaking reminder of the struggle they faced, a final poignant footnote to their epic story. It's like finding a single half-eaten sandwich in a pantry that's otherwise completely empty. The open scholarly debate here revolves around the exact nature of this climate change. Historians still argue whether the shift was a sudden, cataclysmic event that caught the mammoths by surprise, or if it was a gradual, inexorable change that they were simply unable to adapt to. Was it a sudden temperature drop that killed off their food source overnight, or was it a slow, creeping decline that gave them just enough hope to keep going until it was too late? You watch the herd, their pace slow and their movements weary, and you can't help but wonder. The truth, you realize, is likely a blend of both. a slow, steady decline punctuated by sudden, violent shifts in climate that push them closer and closer to the brink. You feel a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature. It's the chill of a world in decline, of a story nearing its end. The mammoths aren't just walking, they're migrating with a quiet desperation, a desperate hope, that just over the next hill, over the next glacier, they will find a land of plenty. They've been doing this for thousands of years, and for a long time it worked. But now you can feel it in the air, in the tired movements of the herd. The old solutions are no longer working. The great supermarket of the Ice Age is closing its doors, and the mammoths are running out of time. The mood of the herd has changed, hasn't it? The quiet confidence of their new home has given way to a low, simmering anxiety. The ground is hard, the vegetation sparse. Every step is a gamble, a hope that this time this path will lead to a better meal. You can feel their frustration, the deep primal ache of an empty stomach. But as you trudge along with them, you notice something subtle, something almost magical in the way they navigate this difficult world. They aren't just following their eyes, they're following their noses. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact that is often overlooked. The woolly mammoth's keen sense of smell played a crucial role in guiding them to new food sources and migration routes. You watch a young mammoth, its trunk held high, sniffing the air with an almost hypnotic concentration. It's not just a casual sniff. It's a careful, deliberate act of sensory navigation. The trunk, that magnificent, versatile appendage, is not just a tool for eating and drinking. It's a biological radar system, an olfactory marvel that can detect the faintest scent of water or vegetation from miles away. It's like having a superpower, a way of seeing the world that is completely hidden to us. The air to us is just cold and crisp. But to a mammoth, it's a tapestry of scents, a map of the world. They can smell the difference between a patch of nutrient-rich grass and a patch of dry, brittle stalks. They can smell the faint, earthy scent of a mineral, lick a crucial source of salt and other essential nutrients. They can even smell the subtle shift in the wind that tells them a storm is coming or that a predator is nearby. This ability was not just a convenience, it was a matter of life and death. In a world where food was scarce and the landscape was a vast, featureless expanse of ice and snow, the mammoth's nose was its most powerful tool for survival. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scientists believe that the mammoth's trunk was so sensitive that it could detect the subtle changes in the air pressure caused by an approaching glacier. Imagine being able to smell a glacier. It's a mind-boggling concept, but it speaks to the incredible sensory abilities of these animals. Their world was not just seen, but smelled a rich, complex tapestry of olfactory information that we can only begin to imagine. It's a bit like you trying to find your favorite food with your eyes closed, but instead of finding it by touch, you find it by smelling the microscopic particles of its deliciousness floating through the air. The open scholarly debate here revolves around the extent of this sensory navigation. Historians still argue whether the mammoths relied on their sense of smell as their primary tool for navigation, or if it was just one of many tools they used. Did they follow their noses blindly, or did they use their sense of smell in conjunction with other cues like the position of the sun, the lay of the land, and the collective memory of the herd? You watch the matriarch, her trunk held high, and you can't help but wonder if she's just sniffing the air or if she's reading a map that is completely invisible to you. The answer, you realize, is likely a blend of both. The sense of smell was an incredible tool, but it was just one part of a complex system of navigation that included instinct, memory, and experience. The herd moves and you move with them, following their silent olfactory map. You can almost feel the promise on the wind, the scent of spring's first promise, a faint, earthy smell that speaks of new life and new food. It's a fragile hope, a desperate gamble that the world will be different just over the next hill. But for a species teetering on the edge, a fragile hope is all they have. You've watched them cross continents, adapt to new lands, and survive the harshest of winters. Now you're watching them use their most powerful tool to find a way forward, to find a future in a world that is slowly but inexorably closing its doors. You feel the ground beneath your feet softening, a welcome change from the hard, frozen earth you've grown accustomed to. The air, while still cold, carries a new kind of dampness, the unmistakable scent of melting ice and wet earth. The herd's pace, which had grown sluggish and weary, seems to pick up a renewed sense of purpose in their movements. The matriarch at the head of the group raises her head, her tusks gleaming in the pale sunlight, and you can almost feel her sense of relief. The long, brutal winter is finally giving way to a promise of new life. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. Mammoth migrations were directly linked to the retreat of glaciers and the subsequent emergence of new flora. The Ice Age, as you know, was a dynamic period of ebb and flow. Glaciers didn't just sit there, they expanded and contracted with the subtle shifts in global climate. And the mammoths, those magnificent wanderers, were expert followers of this grand geological dance. As the massive ice sheets began to melt and retreat, they left behind a fertile, newly exposed landscape. This fresh, untouched earth was a blank canvas for life, and the first things to spring up were the nutrient-rich grasses and hardy shrubs that the mammoths craved. Imagine a giant frozen blanket slowly being pulled back to reveal a delicious meal underneath. That's what you are witnessing. The mammoths aren't just walking. They're following the retreating glaciers, a kind of ancient biological treasure hunt. Their migration routes were not random. They were a direct response to the movement of the ice. They were following the promise of new life, the scent of fresh grasses, and the feel of soft, wet earth. This was their salvation, their opportunity to regain their strength after a long, brutal winter. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scientists believe that the mammoths themselves helped to speed up this process. By grazing on the newly exposed vegetation and trampling the earth with their massive feet, they were essentially tilling the soil, creating a more fertile environment for new plant growth. It's a bit like a giant prehistoric lawnmower that not only cut the grass, but also fertilized the soil. So in a way, the mammoths weren't just following the new landscape, they were actively helping to create it. It's a beautiful symbiotic relationship between a massive animal and the world around it. They were both a product of their environment and a shaper of it. The open scholarly debate here revolves around the timing of these movements. Historians still argue whether the mammoths followed the glaciers in real time, a kind of nose-to-the-ground pursuit, or if their movements were a more gradual generational response to the climate shifts. Did they move as the ice melted, or did they only move when the new land had become established enough to support them? You watch the herd, their pace still deliberate, but with a new sense of purpose, and you can't help but wonder. The answer, you realize, is likely a mix of both. The initial push may have been a slow, methodical expansion, but as the climate began to warm more rapidly, their movements likely became more urgent and direct. The feeling of hope is almost palpable now. The sun seems a little brighter, the world a little less gray. The herd is moving toward a future that for the first time in a long time seems full of promise. You've watched them survive the harshness of the tundra, the desperation of the long march, and the brutal reality of a shrinking world. Now you're watching them follow the promise of a new spring, a new life, a new meal. The glaciers may have once been their enemy, but now they are a guide, a silent, slow-moving compass, pointing them toward a future of abundance. The rhythm of the herd is a kind of low-rolling thunder, a constant soothing sound that has become the soundtrack to your journey. You've been with them through the lean times and the moments of quiet abundance. The landscape is still vast, but it feels different now. The vegetation is lusher, the earth richer, and the air carries a sweet, earthy scent. But as the herd continues its relentless search for new pastures, you notice them doing something a little odd, a kind of detour that doesn't seem to make sense. They are moving away from the abundant grasses and toward a barren, rocky outcropping, their movements slow and deliberate. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact that reveals a crucial part of the mammoth's survival strategy. Mammoth migrations were not just about finding new food, but also about finding specific mineral deposits or licks that were vital for their health. You watch as a matriarch, her trunk held low, carefully sniffs a patch of a reddish-brown, salt-caked earth. With a gentle push of her tusk, she scrapes away a layer of dirt and begins to lick the exposed rock. The rest of the herd follows suit, their immense bodies, a quiet procession, to this small, unassuming patch of earth. This isn't just a snack. It's a vital part of their diet, a kind of prehistoric vitamin supplement that was essential for their survival. These mineral licks, rich in sodium, calcium, and other essential minerals, were the equivalent of a modern-day pharmacy for the mammoths. Their diet of high-fiber grasses was excellent for calories and energy, but it often lacked these crucial minerals. Without them, their bones would weaken, their muscles would ache, and their overall health would decline. So these detours, these seemingly random treks to barren, rocky areas, were not random at all. They were carefully planned pilgrimages, a journey to a place of health and wellness. These mineral licks, like ancient signposts, were so important that they likely shaped the mammoth's migration routes for thousands of years. Here's a quirky tidbit: the woolly mammoth's tusks, in addition to being a tool for clearing snow, and a weapon, may have also been used to break apart these hard mineral deposits. Imagine a mammoth using its magnificent curved tusks like a giant pickaxe, chipping away at the rock to get to the precious minerals underneath. It's a powerful image, a testament to the incredible versatility of these animals. It also gives us a new perspective on why they might have been so sought after by early humans. A massive tusk wasn't just a trophy. It was a tool, a symbol of a life spent in a constant, intelligent search for survival. The open scholarly debate here revolves around the location and importance of these licks. Historians still argue whether the location of these mineral deposits was a primary driver of their migration routes, or if it was a secondary consideration. Did a herd choose a migration route based on the location of a reliable mineral lick, or did they simply make detours to find them along their journey? You watch the mammoths, their tongues gently licking the salty earth, and you can't help but wonder. The answer, you realize, is likely a mix of both. For a herd of animals this large with such a high demand for nutrients, a reliable source of minerals was just as important as a reliable source of food. So their journeys were likely a complex tapestry of both a careful balance between the need for calories and the need for health. The journey continues, but with a new understanding. You've watched them cross continents, adapt to new lands, and survive the harshest of winters. Now you're watching them with a new appreciation for their intelligence, their ingenuity, and their unwavering determination to find everything they need to survive. The journey isn't just about finding food, it's about finding life. And sometimes life is found in the most unexpected of places, even a barren, salty rock. The herd, this great mobile society, has been your entire world for what feels like an age. You've witnessed their moments of quiet contentment and their periods of desperate struggle. But as the migration continues, as they move further into the new continent, you notice something new and fascinating about their behavior. The single unified herd you started with is now fragmenting, breaking off into smaller groups. The quiet rolling thunder of a single large group is being replaced by the rhythmic, purposeful stride of a few smaller ones. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact that is often overlooked in the grand story of the woolly mammoths. Different subpopulations of mammoths developed specialized diets and unique migration patterns as they expanded across the North American continent. The Great Unified Migration that brought them across the Bering Land Bridge was just the first chapter. The second was about settling in, about finding a niche and making it their own. You watch as one group, a smaller collection of mammoths, led by a younger matriarch, turns and heads toward a vast, rolling grassland. They are a grass-eating subpopulation, perfectly adapted to a diet of the same high-fiber grasses that their ancestors ate. Their migration route is a careful, deliberate dance, a constant search for the freshest, most abundant fields. Another group, a slightly older, more weathered collection of animals, seems to be heading toward a more wooded, mountainous region. They are a mixed feeder subpopulation, a group that has learned to supplement their diet of grasses with a variety of shrubs, mosses, and even the bark of trees. Their tusks are more worn, a testament to the tough, fibrous plants they've learned to eat. Their migration route is a more complex tapestry of movements, a constant search for a variety of food sources. It's a beautiful, elegant solution to the problem of a vast, diverse continent. Instead of all the mammoths trying to do the same thing in the same place, they are specializing, carving out their own little corner of the world. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some paleontologists believe that these dietary specializations even led to subtle physical differences between the groups. The grass eaters may have developed slightly different teeth with more pronounced ridges for grinding the tough grasses. The mixed feeders may have developed stronger jaws to handle the tougher, woodier plants. It's a bit like you and your friends with your different tastes in food eventually developing different kinds of muscles from lifting different kinds of weights. It's a slow, subtle change, but over thousands of years it could have led to different kinds of mammoths, all descended from the same ancestors. The open scholarly debate here revolves around the role of these subpopulations in the eventual extinction of the species. Historians still argue whether this dietary specialization was a strength or a weakness. Was it a brilliant survival strategy that allowed them to colonize a vast continent, or did it make them more vulnerable to localized environmental changes? Did the grass eaters, for example, die out first when a sudden climate shift killed off the grasses, leaving them with no other food source? Or did their specialization make them more resilient, better able to survive in their specific niche? You watch the groups separate, a poignant moment of a society dividing, and you can't help but wonder. The truth you realize is likely a mix of both. Specialization was a brilliant strategy, but it also came with a risk. It was a gamble, a bet on the future of a particular environment. The journey continues, but it's no longer a single, unified story. It's a collection of many different stories, each one a testament to the incredible adaptability and resilience of these magnificent creatures. You've watched them cross continents, adapt to new lands, and survive the harshest of winters. Now you're watching them with a new appreciation for the diversity of their lives, the different paths they took and the different futures they were trying to build. The mammoth is not just one animal, but many a rich tapestry of subpopulations, each with its own story, its own diet, and its own destiny. The air is different again. Not just colder, but taut with a kind of unspoken tension. The quiet rolling thunder of the herd's movements has an edge to it now, a subtle note of anxiety that wasn't there before. The landscape, once a grand open buffet, is now a contested space. The mammoths aren't just sharing the world with each other anymore. They're competing with a growing number of other inhabitants, some of them terrifyingly new and others surprisingly familiar. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact that is often glossed over in the grand epic of the mammoth's migration and diet. The mammoth's final decline was exacerbated by increasing competition for dwindling food resources with other megafauna, and crucially, with early humans. The North American continent wasn't just home to mammoths. It was a bustling ecosystem of enormous proportions. You see a herd of bison in the distance, their massive, shaggy bodies a powerful presence on the plains. They too are grass eaters, and they are now competing directly with the mammoths for the same limited resources. The once abundant fields are being eaten from all sides, and the delicate balance of the ecosystem is beginning to teeter. But the most potent competition, the most unsettling presence in the landscape, is something new. You catch a glimpse of them on the horizon, their forms small and unassuming, but their presence is a jolt to your senses. They are the first humans to arrive on the scene, a new kind of predator, a new kind of competitor. They are not just hunters. They are gatherers, and their diet, like the mammoths, is tied to the availability of plants. They are taking a small but growing share of the resources, a little more each year, a little more each generation. Their presence is a quiet, subtle threat, a slow-moving storm on the horizon that is getting closer every day. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scientists have argued that the woolly mammoths and early humans were locked in a kind of unintentional food war. While humans didn't compete for the same massive quantity of vegetation as the mammoths, they did rely on a variety of plants for their diet, many of which were the same plants the mammoths used as a last resort food source during the lean winter months. Imagine the mammoths relying on a patch of hardy shrubs to get through a brutal winter, only to find that a group of humans has already picked them clean. It's a subtle but powerful form of competition, a silent struggle for survival that played out over thousands of years. It wasn't a head-on battle. It was a slow, inexorable squeeze on the mammoth's food supply. The open scholarly debate here revolves around the impact of human hunting on the mammoth population. Historians still argue whether human hunting was the primary cause of the mammoth's extinction, or if it was just one of many factors. Did the arrival of humans with their clever tools and cooperative hunting strategies tip the balance against a species already struggling with a changing climate? Or were the mammoths already on a path to extinction, and human hunting was just the final push? You watch the herds, their movements more anxious now, and you can't help but wonder. The truth you realize is likely a mix of both. The mammoths were a species in decline, and the arrival of humans with their hunger for both meat and plants was the final fatal blow. The landscape is still vast, but it feels smaller now, more crowded, more dangerous. The quiet, rhythmic stride of the herds is now punctuated by a sense of urgency, a desperate need to find a place that is safe, a place where the food is abundant, and the competition is not so fierce. The mammoths are no longer just wanderers. They are refugees, a species on the run from a world that is slowly but inexorably closing in on them. You feel the weight of their struggle, the quiet desperation of a species trying to survive in a world that no longer seems to want them. The wind has a new sound, now a low, mournful sigh that seems to carry the weight of an ancient sadness. The rhythmic, purposeful stride of the herds has become a desperate scramble, a hurried flight from a world that is shrinking around them. You feel the ground beneath your feet hard and unforgiving, and you know with a deep intuitive certainty that you are witnessing the last desperate act of a species. This is the final migration, the last winter's supper, and it is a journey fueled by a hope that is slowly but inexorably running out. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact that is as poignant as it is profound. The last migrations of the woolly mammoths were often frantic, desperate pushes toward the last remaining pockets of lush vegetation, a final gamble for survival. You are with a small, weary herd, their coats matted and their movements slow. They are not following a planned route. They are following a rumor, a distant memory of a place where the grasses were still tall and the water still flowed. They are moving toward the last remnants of the Mammoth steppe ecosystem, a small, isolated pocket of a world that once spanned continents. It's a sad, heartbreaking journey, a desperate search for a meal that may no longer exist. The air is cold, but it's not the cold that is the problem. It's the emptiness. The landscape is a vast, white blanket of snow and ice, a world that has been scoured clean of life. The other megafauna, the bison, the horses, the caribou, have either moved on or have perished. The silent, subtle competition of a few sections ago is now a stark reality. The mammoths are alone, their immense size, a poignant reminder of a world that has passed. They are no longer the kings of the plains. They are the last survivors, a species clinging to the last threads of its existence. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scientists have discovered that the stress of this final period of decline is literally etched into their bones. By analyzing the fossilized bones of the last mammoths, they have found evidence of stress fractures, malnutrition, and other signs of a species on the brink. Imagine a bone that tells a story, a silent, painful narrative of a creature that was slowly starving to death. These bones are a testament to the immense struggle they faced, a final, physical record of a species fighting for its life. It's a bit like looking at a person's hands and seeing the calluses and scars from a lifetime of hard labor. These mammoth bones are a biography of a species' final years, a heartbreaking testament to their endurance. The open scholarly debate here revolves around the location of these last refugees. Historians still argue whether the last mammoths were a single, isolated population in a few small pockets of Siberia and North America, or if they were a more widespread but incredibly diminished population. Were they all clustered together in a few final desperate strongholds, or were they scattered across the continents, each group a final lonely bastion of a once great species? You watch the herd, their movements slow and their heads bowed, and you can't help but wonder. The truth you realize is likely a mix of both. There were probably a few isolated pockets, but the last remnants of the species were likely scattered and alone, each group fighting its own quiet battle for survival. The journey is almost over. The herd moves with a quiet desperation, a silent prayer that the next hill will reveal a field of green, a promise of a future. But you can feel it in the air and the tired movements of the mammoths that this is not a journey to a new life. It is a journey to an ending. You have been a witness to their grand journey, and now you are a witness to their final, heartbreaking act. The great, magnificent wanderers, the kings of the Ice Age, are no longer wandering. They are simply trying to find a place to rest. The air is still and heavy, a silence that feels more profound than any you've ever experienced. The ground beneath your feet is no longer a path, but a final resting place. The last migration is over. The journey, which began with a simple need for food, has reached its inevitable conclusion. But even in this final heartbreaking chapter, there is a final, beautiful revelation, a secret that has been locked away for thousands of years, a story told, not in words, but in a final, quiet meal. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact that is in a way the most intimate and poignant of all. The preserved stomach contents of woolly mammoth carcasses offer a rare and unparalleled glimpse into a mammoth's final meal, providing a wealth of information about their diet and the world they inhabited. You are not standing in a museum or lab. You are standing in a moment frozen in time. You can almost see it, the last meal. It's not a grand feast, but a humble, desperate collection of what was left. Sedges, Arctic willows, and grasses all preserved in the unforgiving embrace of the permafrost. This final meal is not just a biological sample. It's a time capsule, a snapshot of a world that no longer exists. Imagine a scientist carefully extracting the last remnants of a meal from a mammoth's stomach. It's like opening a letter from a lost world, a final, heartbreaking message from a species that has passed. The scientists can tell from the specific plants and pollens found what the mammoth was eating in its final days. They can tell if it was eating a varied diet or if it was desperately clinging to the last few scraps of vegetation. They can tell with an almost agonizing clarity the story of its final hours. It's a bit like you finding an old diary of a long-lost ancestor and reading about their last day. It's a powerful emotional experience, a connection to a world that feels so impossibly distant. Here's a quirky tidbit. The permafrost, the frozen ground that has held these secrets for thousands of years, is so cold and so stable that it can preserve not only the stomach contents, but also the DNA of the plants themselves. This has allowed scientists to reconstruct the ancient ecosystem, to literally see what the world looked like through the eyes of a mammoth. They can sequence the DNA of a single blade of grass that was eaten thousands of years ago, giving them a glimpse of the flora that made up the mammoth steppe. It's a bit like a detective solving a cold case using a single, incredibly well-preserved fingerprint. The stomach contents of the mammoths are not just a record of their diet. They are a key to unlocking the mysteries of an entire lost world. The open scholarly debate here revolves around the role of these stomach contents in solving the mystery of the mammoth's extinction. Historians still argue whether the evidence from these last meals points to a sudden, catastrophic event, or if it's just the final chapter of a long, slow decline. Do the stomach contents suggest that the mammoths were in good health before their death, pointing to an outside cause like a human hunter or a sudden illness? Or do they show clear signs of malnutrition and stress, suggesting that they were already on the brink? You can almost see the scientists in their white lab coats poring over these ancient remains, trying to piece together a story that is as old as time itself. The journey has ended, but the story is not over. The mammoths may be gone, but their final meals are a living, breathing testament to their existence, a quiet, powerful reminder of a world that was and a journey that was so epic, so grand that it is still being told one fossilized plant at a time. You stand in this moment a silent witness to a final meal, and you feel the weight of a world that is gone but not forgotten. The silence has settled in now, a profound and heavy quiet that feels as old as the world itself. The wind no longer whispers of movement and migration, but carries the faint, ghostly echoes of a story that has reached its end. You've walked with them through the lean times and the abundant seasons across continents, and through the long, lonely watches of the night. You've watched them live, and you've watched them die. And now you are standing in a world that feels a little emptier without them. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact that is in many ways the most important of all. The woolly mammoths' diet-driven journey shaped their ultimate fate, leaving a profound and lasting legacy on the world and the ecosystems they once dominated. The story of the mammoth isn't just about a creature that went extinct. It's a story about a magnificent, intelligent animal that was perfectly adapted to its environment, a species that moved and lived according to the simple, non-negotiable needs of its stomach. And in the end, it was the very thing that drove them their diet that also played a major role in their downfall. As the climate warmed, as the grasslands of the Mammoth steppe began to shrink, their world became smaller and smaller, until there was nowhere left to go. The mammoths left behind more than just fossils and frozen carcasses. They left a legacy, a deep and lasting imprint on the world they once inhabited. Their constant grazing and trampling helped to maintain the open grasslands of the steppe, preventing forests from taking over and creating a unique ecosystem that supported a wide variety of animals. Their movements carved out paths that would later be followed by other animals and eventually by humans. The mineral licks they so desperately sought became vital resources for the humans who came after them. In a way, they were the silent architects of the ancient world, their lives and their deaths shaping the very contours of the landscape. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scientists believe that the extinction of the woolly mammoth and other megafauna had a direct and lasting impact on global climate. By constantly grazing and trampling the grasses, they kept the land from being overgrown with trees and shrubs. This kept the albedo, or the reflective quality, of the land high, which in turn helped to keep the world cooler. With the mammoths gone, the trees and shrubs began to grow, absorbing more sunlight and possibly contributing to the very warming that ultimately led to their demise. It's a bit like a group of people leaving a room and the thermostat, which was once kept at a comfortable temperature by their presence, suddenly skyrocketing. It's a powerful and humbling thought, a reminder that the world is a complex, interconnected system, and the loss of a single, magnificent species can have ripple effects that last for thousands of years. The open scholarly debate here revolves around the long-term legacy of the mammoth extinction. Historians still argue whether the loss of the mammoths was a catastrophic event that irrevocably changed the course of global history, or if it was just a natural part of the ebb and flow of life on Earth. Was their extinction a warning, a cautionary tale about the fragility of life and the delicate balance of ecosystems, or was it simply a moment in time, a necessary step in the evolution of our planet? You stand in the quiet, empty landscape, and you can't help but wonder. The truth you realize is likely a mix of both. The mammoth's extinction was a great tragedy, but it was also a moment of transition, a moment that paved the way for the world that we know today. The story is over. The journey is complete. The great, magnificent wanderers are gone, but their legacy remains a quiet, powerful echo in the wind. The world they once inhabited is now a world that is ours, and we are left with their story. A story of hunger, of migration, of survival, and of a final, heartbreaking end. And now, as the last echoes of their story fade, into the vast silence of the night, you can almost feel the ground beneath you growing still. The long journey is over. The world has gone quiet. The ancient landscape, once a bustling stage for these magnificent creatures, is now a peaceful, timeless expanse. The memory of the mammoths, of their slow, rhythmic stride and their gentle, rumbling conversations, is a soft whisper on the wind. Let that quiet whisper lull you, a gentle lullaby from a world long past. The cold is gone, replaced by the soft, enveloping warmth of your blanket. The fear and anxiety of the journey are gone, replaced by a deep and abiding peace. Close your eyes now. The mammoths have found their final rest, and so should you. Sleep now and let their grand journey be the landscape of your dreams. Sweet dreams.